children go through Buzz Aldrin. My older daughter is a senior at Montclair High School, and my younger daughter is an 8th grader. So this is actually my last year at Buzz after having 6 years of children at the school. And we've had a wonderful experience all along. I would say my kids, as probably those of you who have multiple children in your household, are very different learners, and they've both really found their path at Buzz. Buzz has about 675 students divided over our 3 grades, about 225 per grade. We are divided into a house system. So there are 5 houses at Buzz. Our houses are just named by numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 4 of the 5 houses will be open next year for incoming 6th graders. Our school day begins at, the first bell is at 7:40 in the morning. That is certainly a transition from the middle school, from the elementary school years. And school ends at 2:09. So we are actually on the same schedule as Glenfield. So 7:50 start, 2:09 ending. And I would say that one of the differences is that the Buzz Aldrin schedule is done as a block schedule. So students have 4 classes per day, and each of their classes are 80 minutes long. And they rotate through their classes. This year, A days and B days, where they sort of have 3, they have 2 kind of core courses, their gym or their foreign language, and then 1 elective each day. And those go A days and B days. In a typical year, they have actually 3 electives, and it is an A through F schedule. That sounds super confusing, but the kids get it very quickly. But I think the biggest thing is that it's 4 80-minute blocks in the day. We are the STEM magnet. As our art teachers will always say, we are actually the STEAM magnet, because we do have some pretty vibrant arts programs. We have studio art classes, digital photography, a fantastic dance program, a play that gets put on every year. There's band, there's chorus. So all of the things that students want to do in the arts, they can do at Buzz. But they also have, for their STEM curriculum, something called Project Lead the Way, which 6th graders and 7th graders have to take. And it's a project-based class where they do some engineering design. My older daughter did things like a CO2 powered car, a balloon rocket, all sorts of things that they were doing, and they were coming up against ways to put materials together and make something, and then figure out a way to make that thing fly or move down the road or whatever. So I do think that engineering design is pretty strong. We do also have after school clubs. There are robotics clubs, Science Olympiad team, which is competing this week. There's Model UN. There's all sorts of after school clubs that students can get involved in. And so let me think if there's anything else that I wanted to mention. I think that's mostly it. I'm excited to meet all of you, happy to answer questions. And I'm sure my vice president is on. So Selma, is there anything that I missed that was crucial?
You never miss anything. This is why you're our president.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we're both here. I'll be monitoring the chat. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them in the chat, or just, text me, because I can see there's a lot of people here that I know. So please do.
Anyway, welcome, and you can't make a bad choice here. So we're happy to answer questions, all of us.
Tessie, you're muted.
I said, who wants to go next? Glenfield, Sarah, Corinne?
Sure.
I mean,
who wants to go first?
Who wants to go first?
Sure. Why don't I start with just the basics, Corinne, and you want to,
Sure.
And then I'll turn it over to you. So, hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm the co-president with Corinne, and we have another co-president who can't be on, Amy Youn-Felder, and I completely agree with Mary Sue. You cannot go wrong with any of the middle schools. I have a junior who went through Renaissance, who actually wanted to go to Buzz and didn't get in, and then said, oh, Renaissance looks good too, so I'm just going to stick with that. And which you would think, two totally different kinds of environments, but I really do believe now that I've been at Glenfield and Renaissance, he would have been happy anywhere, and so would my daughter. But at Glenfield, I have an 8th grader, and we have 2 houses per grade, and your child sticks with their house throughout their time at Glenfield, which honestly in the pandemic has been lovely. I mean, these teachers really do know their kids, and it's been a little silver lining. We operate on an ABC day. Your kids have your core classes every day, and then they rotate through electives. Currently, we do not operate on a block system like Buzz. But we may shift a little bit in that direction, at least with core classes. It's unclear at the moment. We're stalled in examining our schedule through once the pandemic hit. Corinne, you want to?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Corinne Smithen, and I come from the Nishwain Hillside track. So the nice thing is Sarah and I have had different experiences. So I have an 8th grader also, and I also have a 9th grader and a 12th grader. And I have been the co-president of Glenfield for 7 years. This is my last year. So it's, it's bittersweet, but I know it'll be left in good hands, and everyone coming in will be great. But like Sarah said, the house structure, so Sarah, actually, her child is in what's called the closed house, and and my children have been in the open house. So that's a little unique to Glenfield, and you'll hear that a lot about open and closed. And the best way to describe it is the closed house is your traditional classrooms, the way that you would go to Buzz or Renaissance, where you have a classroom with door and walls, and you go to your English classroom and your math classroom. The open house structure looks like a pod, in that it's a big quad room with just kind of lockers and half walls kind of barricading the 4 basic classes. So your math, your English, math, language arts, social studies, and science are in kind of a big open space, but there are barriers with lockers that divide it. So there's a little bit of noise, but it's a humming noise. It was never a distraction for my children, but that's the thing you have choice in. It's one or the other, and then you stay with those for 3 years. And so you can choose that. Like Sarah said, electives, ABC schedule, there's a play that is big performing arts. There's a lot of performing arts at Glenfield, so you can be in the play. There's an orchestra. There's also a lot of STEM classes you can take. I think as we go through it, people will have a lot of questions to ask, but I don't want to overwhelm anybody right here. But as they all said, all the middle schools are great, and they all just have you can take busing, you walk, whatever works for your family. I don't want to go over your time, Tessie. I know we have stopwatch.
Thanks, Corinne.
Yeah.
Before we go to Renaissance, I see Dr. Pons just joined us. Dr. Pons, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I want to say good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I was a little bit late. I was working on a couple of situations. Just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And the middle schools are great. And I'll be announcing on Monday when we'll start in-person middle schools. So thank you for being patient. And I know it's been a long journey, and we're going to keep pushing forward. And just thank you guys. Please join the Parent Teacher Association. It's a great way of getting involved. I have a firm belief that schools are better when parents are engaged. So thank you so very, very much. I'll stay on for a little while. I'm gonna have to pop off, have a couple phone calls to make, but I just want to say thank you. I'll be listening, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Dr. Pons. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to Monday's announcement. All right, Beth, you want to go next? Renaissance.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm Beth Calamia Scheckel, the PTA president at Renaissance, and I'm here with 2 special guests, my 8th grader Carl Scheckel and Mr. Mark Stulbaum, who is one of the amazing math teachers at Renaissance. And if I were describing Renaissance in one word, it would be community. From the small number of classes, there are 4 classrooms per grade with about 85 students per grade, to the teachers who pay so much attention to the students, to the amazing extracurriculars they can do, music, dance, drama, foreign language, clubs, to the community service classes that they take. Just everything about Renaissance to me says community. And I know Carl can tell you when he answers questions, he chose Renaissance coming from Hillside, which is a very big elementary school. And he had a great experience at Hillside too. He went into Renaissance barely knowing any of the other kids in 6th grade. And it was just a matter of days where he felt like that was really his place. So that is Renaissance in a nutshell. I'm gonna let Mr. Stulbaum talk a little bit about the curricular aspects in a few sentences, and then Carl can also tell you quickly about his experience there.
Hi, everyone. Just 2 quick things from school tours that usually come up that I'm not sure were mentioned. Renaissance is the one middle school that doesn't loop, which means we don't stay in houses. So your child will not be with the same teachers in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We have a 6th grade team, a 7th grade team, and an 8th grade team. So that's one of the differences between the 3 middle schools, or what makes Renaissance different. We're also a combination block, non-block school. So for math and language arts, you alternate between a block one day and a regular 40-minute period the next day. So you have math and language arts every day. And then just what always comes up is Renaissance is a little different with math. 2-second history, I didn't realize there was a time limit. Renaissance was founded 20 years ago with the premise of no tracking at all. So everyone took 6th grade math, 7th grade, 8th grade math. Through the years, the program's morphed a little bit, partly from an outcry from parents thinking their child didn't have the same opportunity when they were entering 9th grade. So we're kind of a hybrid non-tracking system now, where everybody takes 6th grade math, and Carl could speak to this because he was the first one who went through it. But if you want to take Algebra A, which is technically the 7th grade math class, you can take it as an elective in 6th grade. So everyone takes 6th grade math. So the decision of whether you're going to take quote unquote advanced math doesn't really get made till 7th grade. You can try it out in 6th grade. If you succeed, then you would take Algebra B in 7th grade, like the other middle school offered to their advanced students. I could certainly speak more about math, but I'll leave it at that at this point.
Carl?
I'll just say this, Mr. Stulbaum and other math teachers also have, unfortunately this year because of the remote situation, it wasn't done, to do an annual presentation.
Yes, that is true.
About the math program and tracking with Jennifer every winter. We sit in the high school cafeteria and talk about this. So unfortunately, there was no opportunity to do it this year, but next year, I'm pretty sure it's going to be done again because it's such a great way for parents to learn more about the math programs, not only middle schools, but also tracking going into the high school and how the whole thing works. And I probably calm a lot of people's expectations and anxieties over, whether or not their kids are on the right track and if they're going to, get into Harvard or whatever. That is probably the best, one of the best presentations that the district does. And I highly recommend it once it comes back again for you guys to kind of save the date for that and be part of that.
And if I could, I'd be willing to speak to anyone about that. I've done that presentation for the last 3 years. So I don't want to make this a math meeting, of course, but if anyone wants to speak about it or ask questions, I could cover almost everything that goes on in that math night meeting.
Thank you.
And Carl wanted to have a chance to introduce himself and Renaissance also.
Hi, I'm Carl. I'm in 8th grade and I go to Renaissance Middle School. I definitely think it's a really nice school. I can remember my first day of 6th grade like it was yesterday. My favorite part of it was when the science teacher, Mr. Smith, set something on fire. I think it was like mushroom spores. That's like one of my fondest memories of Renaissance. That's when I really knew, yeah, this is an amazing school. The teachers are all really nice. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they're all amazing. I also really like the elective classes. One of the ones was genetics that I actually took this year. I thought that was really good with the 7th grade science teacher, Miss Cullen. And yeah, so I definitely think Renaissance is a really nice community and you're going to meet a lot of nice people and teachers there.
And another thing that I think is so great about it is that they don't say goodbye to their 6th grade teachers once they move up to 7th and 8th grade, because the teachers teach electives for all the different grades. And so they really remember the students and make them feel, as I said, like they're part of the community.
Thank you. Mary Sue, do you want to touch academics a bit and talk about how students choose classes for 6th grade, for instance?
Sure. There are 4 core courses that a student would have in their house: English, history, science, and math. And those core teachers would be teachers that would be with that student for 3 years. They'd have their in-house 4 core teachers. Sometimes math is out of house, but that depends on the student's tracking or scheduling for that particular year. But in general, they have their core teachers that are going to stay with them for 3 years. They will also have gym every year. And then they'll have a choice of a world language. It's either French or Spanish at Buzz. So students would have that as sort of their core courses. This year, due to remote learning, students had 2 electives, and actually 6th graders only technically had 1 elective because they had that Project Lead the Way class for half a year, and they also had a class called Tech Essentials for half the year. So they only had 1 elective. In a more typical year, they actually do get 2 electives to put in their schedule, and so I would expect that they'll be back in that more typical schedule again next year. The electives, there's really a wide range. Some are more fun, some are more academic. There's, studio arts, digital photography. There's a broadcast studio, and there's a class called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire that's really popular. That's kind of a business class. My daughters have done chorus, they've done band. There are other advanced STEM electives like a game design class and kind of a game design with robots class that they can do. So there's all kinds of fun electives that the teachers have and that students can do. And again, as I said, in a typical year, they would have, as a 6th grader, one is the PLTW electives is taking up an elective space, and they would have 2 electives that they would take. And then in 7th grade, also they have another PLTW class to take. And then 8th grade, they're allowed to take sort of all of their electives are open. There are also some advanced classes that students can get recommended for when they're older. There's one called Literature Alive, which is an advanced English class. And yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of fun things that they can take. Usually the schedules are that the Buzz counselors will come into or meet with this year the feeder schools. So our feeder schools are Watchung, Bradford, and Northeast. And they also meet with other families sometime in the spring and go over initial schedules and choices with 5th grade families. The student doesn't get their schedule until a week, and their house's appointment until about a week before classes start in September. So you'll put in your choices in the spring, but you won't actually see the house assignment and the schedule until a few days before we start in September.
Thank you. Sarah, Corinne, same question.
Sorry to interrupt, just to,
Go ahead.
are we talking about extracurriculars in the clubs yet, or is that coming later?
Later. This is just academics, core and electives. Yeah.
Okay, I can talk about Glenfield. I know it pretty well. So as Sarah said, the schedule may shift a little bit next year. So I'm just going to talk about kind of the schedule that has been current for the last at least 7 years that had children in there. Like Mary Sue said, Glenfield's similar in that your core teachers are the same for 3 years. Your foreign language teacher, depending on what language you could take French, you can take Spanish, or you can take Mandarin. So some of the Nishwain and Hillside families, you're coming from where you've taken Mandarin, you can continue on that program. If you're a child that's coming from any of the other elementary schools, you can also take Mandarin. You can start in 6th grade in Mandarin. So you won't, you don't lose anything by starting in 6th grade in Mandarin also. There's only one Mandarin teacher, so you will have the same Mandarin teacher every year, but there are a couple of Spanish teachers and there's one French teacher. So you may get a different elective teacher depending on a given year. Your electives, one of the things that Glenfield has, so Sarah mentioned, you have blocks of A, B, and C day. So every day in that block is an elective. One of them is a gym or physical education. You can take dance as that option, which again, for the Hillside folks, that's kind of a continuum there too. They even have adventure ed. They have these different physical fitness classes that you can take within that. You can take an art class, you can take a STEM related class, you could take music classes. My kids have done the acting classes, the chorus classes, they've done the various things. And then what we also have is an elective 9th period, which is the same amount of time as the other core classes throughout the day. And that would be consistent every day. That's not on the AB schedule. It's the same as your core classes. And a lot of times they're either year long or they're semester long. It depends. Like if you want to do the play and be part of the musical or the play, that's a year-long elective class that is 9th period. If you want to be in the orchestra with Mr. Ward, same thing, that's a 9th period class. There are also, we have CI elective type classes where you can test into, I hate to distinguish that, but Hillside kids are going to know this, but the CI level where if your child, like art, you're going to be given information, all the elementary schools are given information about an art portfolio where you would put that together. And if you're someone who really loves art, you can be placed in a CI art class, which it's just a higher concentration of that specialty and focus. And that's someone who really likes art. Acting is another one. Dance, you have auditions for those classes. Everyone can take dance, but there are different levels, so to speak. I mean, if someone has been taking dance for a long time, the teacher then has different types of classes for beginning dance and kids that have been taking dance, for several years. So that's kind of the electives. Again, the open and closed house, there's probably going to be, does Glenfield offer gymnastics? I see that they do not. I know Mr. Kaplan got moved from Hillside to Glenfield, and I know he was a gymnastics teacher. It's all been online and COVID, so as of now, there is no gymnastics. I can't speak to what might happen in the future as it relates to that physical education piece. I'm just kind of going off of what everything happened pre-COVID. Yeah, so the houses, again, the open and close, you can choose if you want open and close. I saw someone was asking if you want a closed house, you can request that. You're not guaranteed, but if you can request that, whatever your reasonings might be for an open environment, a closed environment, you can request open and close. You don't have to have your kid in one or the other if that does not suit your child.
Can I just add something? I'd like to add something though to what Corinne said, and because what you said earlier was it's a more of a hum in the open classroom than a distraction. There are so many different learning styles at Glenfield.
Right.
And it's such a natural question when you have a kid who's either very reserved and quiet, and you think that maybe they would like the closed house, or your child can't focus and they need the closed house, or my kid's super outgoing and they really need to be moving around all the time, so they want the open house. All of those learning styles are in both kinds of houses, and they do well in both houses. So
True.
I just want to kind of reassure you that if you didn't get your request, your kid will, it's like 99% chance that they will enjoy where they are, and that will actually work for them.
Yes, thank you. That is correct. That is definitely correct. Tessie, I don't know if there's more you want me to add to that.
No, hold on. I think let's have Beth talk a bit and then we'll
Yeah.
come back.
Okay, sure.
Go ahead, Beth.
At Renaissance, certain things are similar. Of course, the students all have social studies, math, English language arts, and science. And I don't know how they cram so many electives in, but there are 3 cycles at Renaissance, and they choose several different electives for each cycle. There's also a choice of foreign language, French, Spanish, and Latin. And Carl takes Latin, so if anyone has any questions about that, he can talk about that. They all, at least in 6th grade, all take dance and a music class, either chorus or band. There are extensions of that, like there's a rock band class for the more advanced musicians. Lots of academic electives, some phys ed electives. So in addition to taking their regular phys ed, they can choose like, what did you take, soccer?
I think so. Yeah.
It's memorable. There are, different art electives. There's an elective about current events. Carl recently, earlier in the year, took a elective called Sports, Race, and History. And the, something that I said that's really nice about the electives is that all of the teachers teach different electives for different age levels. So they see the same teachers again. And so the teachers get to know the students really well. Carl, do you want to add anything about the classes that you take?
No, it's all really interesting. That's like one of the main things I can say about them. Like, no matter what you choose, you're going to have fun doing it.
Sometimes Carl ended up with electives that he didn't necessarily choose, but just ones that fit better into his schedule. But I've never heard him complain about any of the electives. And I think Mr. Stulbaum can probably talk a little bit more specifically about general curriculum items. Whatever I didn't cover.
No, you've covered pretty well. The one thing I'd say about electives, which I don't teach one, being a math teacher, I'm always teaching math, and I'm sure it's similar in the other schools. The electives are chosen by the teacher. The teachers get to pick what class they want to offer as an elective. So they're very passionate about what they're teaching because they're the ones who come up with the elective and the topic that they're going to teach. And it might be the same in the other middle schools as well. So the woman who teaches photography, is a real photographer enthusiast and things along those lines. But you pretty much covered it as far as the electives are concerned and the curriculum.
Thank you. So now that we have covered academics, Selma, do you want to start with extracurriculars?
I'm a big fan of the club's Buzz. That is one of the things that both of my children have found themselves just thriving, even during pandemic right now. My son has been a member of the robotics club with Mr. Taylor, who is the science supervisor, STEM supervisor at Buzz Aldrin Middle School. So he also runs a robotics club and what he calls an ETC, which is basically, which I thought was a pretty genius idea. He just has an open classroom on Tuesdays or Thursdays, I can't remember, for about 2 hours after the school ends. And it's an ETC club. And whoever's interested in technology goes into the classroom for 2 hours, and they either learn how to code, or they work with Legos or whatever it is they want to do that they feel if they want to. The tools are in the classroom, and he just helps them do whatever they feel like doing. I put a whole bunch of websites in the chat, so I encourage everyone to take a look. There are official websites from the school district that are usually written by the principal of the school, so they have that information. I've also put in all the middle school PTA links as well, so you have that information, so you have both sources. So I hope that's helpful for you. But the official list of all the clubs is available on the official websites, because the clubs are actually organized and run by the school administration and the teachers who teach in the school. So they can range from, like I said, my son's in robotics class, start with Hello, which has been a wonderful club that my daughter has been participating in. And they recently did a great presentation for Sandy Hook Promise. They were nationally recognized. It was just such a wonderful way for them to show their leadership and their community mindedness, for which they also received community hours. That's something we can talk to you about later, about the Junior National Honor Society and the community hours, and that they will need for that if anyone's interested. It's a little too early for 6th graders, but something to keep on your radar. There's Harry Potter Club for Harry Potter fans, which is also extremely exciting for kids that are big fans. They get to meet and read books and talk about them and characters. I mean, again, list is enormous. Strongly encourage you to look at both the district website and the PTA website for the information about that.
Thanks, Selma. Sarah, Corinne?
Sorry, I was in the chat. But I think I can answer what I was about to answer in the chat live.
Okay.
Someone asked about science electives.
Yeah, yeah.
At Glenfield.
I was just looking.
Okay, yeah, it's the performing arts magnet, but my kid doesn't want to be in a play. If I put her in dance, she would cry. But she's done work in the planetarium. She's built bridges out of sticks and all sorts of other materials. She's done a mythology class. She's actually done a Harry Potter class. The geometry is an elective at it's a class, it's a core class for a certain math track, but it's also an elective for kids who'd like to take geometry. So there are plenty of math, science, performing arts. There are a ton of electives for them from which to choose.
And there's Science Olympiad and that kind of stuff too.
And robotics.
And robotics, yeah.
And they're really good. They're actually really good. They just competed. The Science Olympiad competition is going on right now.
Yeah.
Well, I remember my daughter when she was in 6th grade. In 5th grade, she tried out and got into drama, which was a big deal. Went to Glenfield, went to drama. 2-3 weeks into it, she said, "I'm switching to robotics." And I was like, what? This is a kid who had never shown any interest in robotics before that. And she did robotics and Science Olympiad all 3 years. So things change. All right, Beth, you want to go next?
Yeah, I was going to say Renaissance is a great robotics team as well.
Really good.
Yep.
Yeah. And their Science Olympiad team is also really good. My kids were on at both schools. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack that.
That's all right. We always appreciate the compliments for
Shout out.
That's the same teacher who likes to set things on fire, including his own hand.
Yes.
Is the one who does the robotics and the Science Olympiad, Mr. Smith. He actually offered a science camp this past summer. A few of the other teachers did too. They offered camps in their backyard when there were very few opportunities for middle school students to do things during the summer. So Carl took several of those in the summer. As for true extracurriculars, there's the drama club. There's typically a performance every year. Even this year, they're doing something. Anybody can participate anyone who wants to there. Carl recently just did a model congress, right? Model congress competition in 6th grade. He did Dungeons and Dragons after school. Mr. Stulbaum recently, a couple of months ago, had a math league, helped the students join a math league competition. And even though it was on a Sunday, he got a good group of students to do that competition. What other clubs have there been an extra?
There's been a drama club. I know that. I don't. But I would say my most favorite club that I've been in has definitely been Dungeons and Dragons. So I remember like every Friday or whatever, I would go in, and at the end I would just be laughing so hard. Because it was really good. The teacher's really nice. Actually, the art teacher, Mr. Woodward. He's a really nice person and a really good teacher. But I would definitely recommend going to Dungeons and Dragons Club. Even if you've never tried the game, I feel like it's a nice introduction and a nice club.
And Mr. Stulbaum is also in charge of, with another parent, of the Renaissance Garden, and that's kind of part of the community service mission at Renaissance, and they grow things to donate to Tony's Kitchen. And so that will be going on during the summer. I know last summer, Carl and some of his friends helped take care of the garden. So, it's a small school with a big heart. So there's plenty for students to do. Mr. Stulbaum, am I missing anything with the
stock market game? We do. It's just another one, but that covered most of it.
Lots of music choices for the students who like that, dance opportunities. All the things that you would hope for in a middle school. Plus, as Mr. Stulbaum said, the teachers teach the kind of electives that they choose because they're passionate about it. And that's similar to what the extracurriculars are like also.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat. How does submitting a portfolio to art work at Glenfield?
I'm trying to type it right now, but I'm trying to type.
Yeah, just say it.
So yeah, I'll just say it. That's fine. I mean, I actually don't, I know the elementary school art teachers actually should have this information, and I would suggest reaching out to them because this is an every year thing that they have to submit. We should double check. We should check with Glenfield. Again, the timing and everything's still online. It's hard to know what time frame with all these auditions. They usually happen in the first week of June. All of this stuff has to be submitted. I think for art, my kids never did it, but you have to submit certain pieces. But there is a framework. There is a guideline. I would check with the elementary school art teachers first because they should know it. We can, make sure that the Glenfield art teachers, whatever their requirements, if they're new or different, make sure that they relay that information to the elementary school art teachers. I can't imagine it's changed much from year to year. Right? I mean, I
don't think so, because I remember one of my kids doing the portfolio in the 5th grade with the Den Watang art teacher. There was a specific list of pieces and types of medium that the children have to make their portfolio, and that gets submitted to the Glenfield CI program, I believe.
Correct. So start with your elementary school teachers. If you're feeling you don't have answers, you can always email Sarah and me, like Glenfield PTA, and we can try to point you in the right direction.
And if you're homeschooled, then you should reach out to the school directly. If someone said if they're homeschooled, you could ask every school what they would like for you to do. Yeah. And I'm sure they'll work with you.
And yes, there is an audition for orchestra or band prior to as well. That also happens. They did it even online last year. So Mr. Ward is the music teacher, and you do audition with the instrument that your child currently play. I will tell you, my daughter did not play an instrument, and she in my eldest, who's a senior now, when she was in 6th grade, she took beginning strings and learned the violin in 6th grade as a beginning instrument class, and 7th and 8th grade was in the orchestra. So that's another, if your child wants to be in the orchestra and doesn't know how to play, there is beginning classes for string and woodwind instruments.
And Glenfield also has jazz band.
Yeah.
Oh, right, and jazz band, right.
Sorry, we have
right.
jazz band that
Yeah.
they're still doing now. It's sort of tricky to do, I think, over Zoom because they meet in the morning at 7:30. And so Mr. Ward said, he doesn't want to wake up the whole household. So they discuss jazz and they go over their music selections, and he does put things together. But in a normal year, these kids try out for jazz band or they're selected, and they choose to go to school
It's
at
7 a.m.
7:30.
I think it's 7.
Is
It's
it
7 a.m.
7, yeah.
Oh, see, Matt, I told Madeline, no, you need your sleep in 7th grade. And I finally caved and said, you can do it in 8th grade. And of course, here we are at home. But it's been amazing. There's such a talented group of kids who do jazz band. And Mr. Ward's really cool. The kids love him.
Can I just weigh in on so for Buzz, there is no band, there's no band audition requirement. Every student a student can start in beginning band. Both my daughters had never played an instrument before 6th grade and started in 6th grade playing an instrument. But if you have a student who comes in with significant instrumental experience, there's kind of 2 band levels. There's beginning band and then there's concert band, and they can be moved up to the concert band or senior, I guess it's called senior band. If they have enough playing experience that the band teacher thinks, hey, they don't need to be in the beginning group, they can move up. For chorus, the chorus is all one level. There's no honors choir. But the chorus teachers in the past have done like a select group that met after school and put together some special pieces for concerts and stuff like that. So, but I would say a good percentage of students start with their instrument in 6th grade. But some of our Northeast students have had previous band experience, and some Watchung students, I guess, come in with some previous band experience. So again, they could move up to the older band sometimes, but a lot of students start right at 6.
Yeah, both of my kids started in 6th grade. They've never played an instrument before. One of them did clarinet, the other one did a trumpet. And Mr. Strauss, who was the band teacher, orchestra teacher until he retired last year, was, he was great. And obviously the new teacher is also quite amazing, even though he teaches from his basement with his twin babies at his side, but he's making it work. And it's
And at Renaissance, the tryouts are just for the rock band. All of the students going into 6th grade choose chorus or band, and they continue, or they can switch in 7th and 8th grade. Carl has stayed with chorus the whole time. All of the students take dance in 6th grade, and then they can choose dance. Dance has been so popular, though, that the students don't always get the dance class that they want because it's so overwhelmingly popular. And I saw a couple of questions. Renaissance starts a little later. Now during remote learning, it starts at 8:30. I seem to remember it's starting at 8:15 last year.
And then it normally ends. I can kind of remember it ending at like a little bit after 4 normally, and then on Fridays it ended at like 2:10.
That was in 6th grade, and
yeah.
then they adjusted it. So Renaissance, you might have heard in the past, had a much longer school day and then a shorter day on Friday. So they still had the same number of contact hours, but it was just shifted around differently because of busing and other teacher contract issues. Just making sure that the teachers were not all putting in so many hours a day. They changed the start time and end time at Renaissance to be a little more aligned with the 2 other middle schools, but it still had a slightly extended day Monday through Thursday and a slightly shorter day on Fridays. And the students can sleep in a little bit compared to the other middle schools. There was a question about who will be the principal next year, and that's not something that we're able, that we know or able to talk about. That would be something to direct to Dr. Pons.
That's just one thing that you just reminded me of. One thing that makes Renaissance unique, we build field trips into our curriculum. I'm not speaking out of turn, am I, Beth? I don't know if you're going to get to this.
Okay.
No.
So each grade chooses field trips, and Carl could probably, he's been on all of them. Oh, I guess you have not been on the 8th grade field trips, obviously. So each grade builds field trips that tie to the curriculum they're teaching. So generally, once a month, the students leave the building. We've gone, African burial grounds. Well, our big field trip is Washington, D.C. at the end of the year for everybody. Why I'm drawing a blank on what the other 8th grade field trips are right now. Carl mentioned some of the ones. I know in 6th grade, you go to the marshlands.
Yeah,
Sorry, Carl, they just came back to me. We go to One World Trade. We go down there. We go to I'm drawing the Holocaust Museum. It's one of the 8th grade field trips, and then I'll let you go, Carl. Sorry about that.
I remember one of the more interesting ones that we go to in 7th grade is the Sleepy Hollow field trip, and you listen to like the Headless Horseman beforehand, just get like a little legend in about the history of the town. So that's pretty cool. I remember we also went on a hike. That was fun.
Sandy Hook.
Yep, Sandy Hook. That was in 6th grade. That was also really fun. At the end of 7th grade, we would go to Pennsylvania, but pandemic stuff, we weren't able to. That is supposedly really fun. And, there's a lot. I could go on and on about all the field trips.
I'm going to say there were 10 field trips a year.
Yeah, it's about once a month. About once a month. The 8th grade does an immigrant walking tour of Lower New York. We used to go to Ellis Island. That was cut short, not because of us, but walking tours of various places in the city. So that's a huge bringing the rest of the world, or experiencing the outside world. And just again, 2 seconds. Renaissance used to have the longer day because we used to travel a lot within the town. That's what the longer day was, to put travel time. We still use Woodman Field. The gym classes go out to Woodman Field for their gym class oftentimes.
One of the questions, it didn't come up yet, but what we had on our sheet was, are the phone policy the same? It's a big deal for the kids. Middle school is when many kids get their phones, which I know there are people trying to push that to 8th grade, but there are still middle schoolers, even elementary schoolers who have phones. Are the phone policies the same in every school? I know we didn't have school in person this year, but before we went to lockdown, what was the phone policy?
I'll start it.
Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah. So yes, it actually changed between when my 12th grader was at Buzz and when my 8th grader was at Buzz. But since my 8th grader was a 6th grader, they've had phones off and away, and they cannot be out during the school day. And I believe that's a district-wide middle school policy, which I think is great. I 1,000% support as a parent. So they're allowed to have their phones on them if they need it for reasons for walking to or from school or that kind of thing, but it is not allowed to be out during the day, and it was really strictly enforced, which I thought was great.
Yeah, which is the same at Glenfield. I see Sarah nodding.
Yeah,
I'm assuming it's the same at Renaissance.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. How do kids find out about things that are happening in school other than Genesis?
Like daily blast type of things, that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's more kids. You mean, well, parents.
Parents.
I can only speak to the houses that my children were in, but teachers do send a lot of communications. Some teachers, some house leaders send daily emails to the parents. updating kind of what's going on each day or for the week. Some teachers do it weekly and they try to just let everybody know. Google Classroom, obviously, it's so hard because everything is online right now to know. But parents are definitely, even pre-pandemic, I mean, I always got daily emails from my kids' house leaders, just telling us, kind of what the homework was. Communication is pretty key. And then, there's always PTA does send out blasts, as often when we can. And the principal sends out weekly blasts, just kind of highlighting things that are going on. Everyone seems to be pretty well informed. I'm sure it's the same at the other schools too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nowadays with technology.
Across the board, every principal sends a weekly email. Every
Mhm.
PTA sends a weekly email as well on alternate days. So you don't get 2 emails in one day. At least we try to space it out like that at Buzz. Like PTA sends a Monday email telling parents what's going to happen during the week, and the principal sends a Friday email telling parents what happened the week before and what is going to happen next week. Those of you that have not had middle school children, this is your first experience of the middle school, please note that even without COVID, it is a lot different than the elementary school experience. You will not be spending the time you may have spent in your elementary school inside the school building. You simply will not, especially at Buzz, I feel. Dr. Stack is very territorial, which we totally respect and should respect. Our admins and our teachers. So always sort of prepare yourself for that. And that was like, I'm one of the more involved parents in the district. And that's one of the first things older parents of older children have told me. They were like, we know you like to be hands-on. Before you go to Buzz, let us just tell you, you gotta calm yourself down because they will lock you out of the building. Because they run their building the way they see fit. And what that also does, it helps your children become more independent, which I think is absolutely amazing. Not only do they become more independent, they start self-advocating. I mean, it's just really, really incredible that growth that happens inside the school building away from you, because that's a critical age for them to also get themselves to kind of spread out their wings a little bit in a safe environment with the teachers who love and support them. So they have support from other adults other than you. So that's a very important thing to think about. So you will know and you will be informed of what you need to know as a parent. And this is, again, telling someone who is very OCD and very on top of things, telling you that it is going to be okay. You will know what you have to know for your child to be successful in the building. And you will be informed of what is necessary for your kids. So that's sort of my wisdom of the night.
But that doesn't stop you from telling people to join the PTA and be more involved, right, Selma?
Never, never. I am
Exactly.
happy to say that we had a record enrollment this year in the pandemic.
Exactly.
Membership in our PTA, because being physically in a building does not stop the volunteering and the advocacy that parents should be doing on behalf of their children and their students and teachers. It's not, the advocacy doesn't, and the work does not happen just in the building. And that's also the difference between the elementary school and the middle school and
Correct.
ultimately high school. We're hoping to have a PTA there next year. There is so much work to do, but it can, as pandemic has proved, it can be done remotely by
Correct.
anyone who is willing to put in the work.
Yeah. There's a great question in chat. Can you talk about how each middle schools prepared your kids for high school, socially and academically? Sarah, you want to go first?
Sure. So I really love the fact that my kids had different experiences in middle school. And my son, who's a junior, who went to Renaissance, they always say, it's small, and they get to the high school and they're like a deer caught in headlights. And I mean, I didn't feel that way. I felt like it was such a nurturing environment at Renaissance. But also because they have the field trips and these different experiences, they have this chance to grow and spread their wings in a different way. And while it is a little bit of a shock to the system to get to the high school, which I'll talk about in a minute, I also feel like my daughter at Glenfield, she came from Edgemont to Glenfield, where I was like, what is going to happen to this child who is in this sweet little Montessori school, and now she's throwing elbows in the hallway to get to class. But it became just sort of like, it's kind of the culture, like that your kids will adjust, I promise you, no matter where they go. They will grow, they will learn. I feel like, there's so many unique teachers. The leadership is unique at each school, but I feel like my son was prepared both academically and socially. I feel like my daughter, a little dicier now because of the pandemic. Let's hope that she's prepared. She's engaged, which I think is super important. And I feel like she'll be ready to go. And I feel like when they get to the high school, the kids are sheltered a little bit. They go to their annex. It's a slightly smaller environment. They are, a little bit protected. They do have to change buildings from time to time, but they do such a beautiful job too at the high school. I mean, your kid, they're going to get lost. It is what it is. It's a big place, but like the middle school starts to prep them for spreading their wings and having that independence. So they are ready by the time they get to the high school. And I really do feel like both of my kids are fine and will be fine. More than fine.
So I'll just say that I have two very, very different students in my household in terms of the way they approach academics and everything, and different interests, all of that. And they both loved Buzz, and I think that they were both well prepared for the academics of high school. What Sarah's talking about, in case you aren't familiar with high school at all, there's a 9th grade annex. There's a separate building that 9th graders are mostly in, and then they move to the bigger building, which is on Chestnut and Park for 10th through 12th. But in terms of kind of that adjustment, I do think that what Selma was saying is so true, that, in 6th grade, and I think this is actually across all the middle schools. So although I'm saying it for Buzz because that's where my kids went, I think it's actually true for teachers across the district, that in 6th grade, there's going to be a little more handholding, a little more nurturing from the teachers. And then as they move them towards 8th grade, the idea is that the students start to develop some of their own self-advocacy and their own independence. And so, although you can, as a parent, see your students' grades and homework grades and everything on Genesis when they get to middle school, the teachers really impress upon them that if they don't turn in an assignment or they get a lower grade, it is their responsibility, not their parents' responsibility or their caregiver's responsibility, to follow up on that and to get to office hours or to follow up with the teacher after school. And I think that, there's going to be, it'll be a softer touch in 6th grade, but by 8th grade, it's more like, no, we're preparing you for a high school experience where you do have to have that independence. And I did feel like both of my daughters were, one is still in 8th grade, so she hasn't been to high school yet, but my older daughter was definitely well prepared for the high school and for the high school level academic expectations, and kind of knew what she needed to do, felt like she was solid in all of her classes. And I do feel like my 8th grader, even though this has been a year of remote learning, it is well prepared for that next step. She's kind of, I feel like this year she has grown both physically and emotionally tremendously, and is like, I can see her as a high schooler already. So, and I think the teachers are, pushing her in that way as well. So I do think that it's, again, I feel like these are kind of across the board district-wide goals for middle school teachers, but I have definitely seen that level of stepping them through at Buzz.
And I can say at Renaissance, something that I noticed this year in particular was really, they have them think about very difficult questions and current events, and not just like in the current events class. And Carl, they've been talking about the election, about vaccine hesitancy, about Black Lives Matter, police brutality, things that are very sophisticated, and not just telling them about what's happening, but really having them learn about it and comment on things like that.
Yeah. Can I just add something to that? I just want to say that every morning in the 8th grade social studies teacher's classroom, Mr. Jackson's classroom, he starts the class off by talking about some type of like morning current event, whether it be like the vaccine. I remember we were talking about the presidential elections, some things about like police brutality, stuff like that. Like he always has something to start off the morning that's related to current events, and I just feel like that's really cool.
And so I see Carl becoming more of an adult, the way he's thinking about these issues. As far as math goes, I don't know how much current events they do, but Mr. Stulbaum has been a very nurturing plus challenging teacher. Carl has been lucky to have him for 7th grade and 8th grade. And I know that he talks about, well, if you don't do these things now, you're not going to be ready for this tough high school class. And Carl takes that very seriously. So I do. Oh, and something that happened today, actually, Carl has a project to do in Latin. And ultimately, I guess it's going to be a PowerPoint, but the teacher has them setting it up in stages, like with an outline and, things that are helping them with their executive functioning. And Carl said, well, I'm just going to do it right in the PowerPoint. I don't need to do these other steps. And I said, well, Mr. P is training you to be a good high school student. He's not having you do this just because he wants to give you extra work. He's teaching you how to do a research project and ultimately have a great product at the end. So funny that topic came up because Carl and I literally talked about this like 3 hours ago.
Thank you. Are there any more questions in chat?
Yeah, there's a really important one about racial tension. We can probably all address this. Yeah, I think we can probably all address this. I was actually late coming onto this call because we hosted our vice principal, Frances Abushi. She does this amazing talk on how to discuss race with your kids. And it really, I feel like it should be like mandatory for all parents to hear her speak about this. And while she's the vice principal now, she was a social studies teacher, and she feels strongly that the social studies curriculum should include discussions on race and social justice, and not that the school should be fully responsible for these discussions, or that you should rely on your school to have these discussions, but that you should understand that it should be woven into your child's experience, and that you should also discuss this at home so that there's an ongoing fluid discussion happening in both places. And we also have a teacher on special assignment for restorative justice. I think every school might have it. We have it at Glenfield, and it's Sarita Carrington. And she definitely infuses discussions around fairness and equality and race when she discusses these things with the kids. And the PTA has really tried hard to expand our leadership at the school so that we have a broader outreach, so that it's not just Corinne and me. It's a team of people who have different connections at the school, so that more people feel comfortable coming out to be part of the PTA and to be part of the conversation, because the school really does feel like it's important to discuss it. And actually, I don't want to put Linda on the spot. And if you don't want to be, Linda, just shake your head and I can talk a little bit for you. But if you want to talk about the equity grant that you're so diligently working on?
There are a few parents at the school, and I've been working with the administration and the SACs, the student assistance counselors, on grants that will create a new advisory social and emotional learning program, and advisories have that instituted at Glenfield starting in the fall. And the focus has been to have a culturally responsive lens in creating this new curriculum, so that this will be an ongoing conversation that'll happen throughout the year. And there's another component of it which they are hoping to develop a program, a series of conversations with parents, so the parents are also aware of what's going on in the classroom, how it's being discussed with their children, and can be part of that ongoing conversation as well. And there are some other initiatives in the works as well about after school, perhaps an after school equity club that maybe will have a book club component, and there are other ideas that are in the works. So I feel like the administration at the school has a real commitment to ensuring that going forward, this is really part of the way Glenfield works.
Thank you, Linda. Mary Sue, Selma.
I mean, I would say really everything that Sarah just said, and that, I think it kind of infused throughout the curriculum and throughout discussions every day. I think if you look at the 6th and 7th and 8th grade English text that students are reading, they do right from 6th grade dive right into English works that they're looking at that are really dealing with racism and genocide and some really difficult topics, social justice right away, and that continues throughout all 3 years. It is absolutely also discussed regularly in history classes. There's also something when school is more typically in session, there's a longer homeroom on Fridays, which are called, what do we call them? Is it advisories?
Yes.
It's late, my brain gave out, but they have a little bit more time to discuss things like bullying, difficult topics. Some of that is peer-led, some of that's led by trained facilitators that come in and talk to the students. And so that happens every Friday for students to have some social emotional learning time. But I think it is really, we've also from the PTA sponsored several speakers to come in and talk to students. I think that some of our after school clubs, like the Start With Hello Club, has been dealing with, social justice issues all year. And so it has kind of permeated everything. And I think there's just ongoing conversations all the time. I can't even say it's sort of like there's this one thing, it's kind of throughout the year.
Exactly. And to Sarah's point and everyone else's point, and Mary Sue's, social emotional learning, there's a specific timing in Buzz's schedule for students, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I believe they get social emotional learning twice or 3 times a week. I can't remember.
This year it's twice a week.
Twice a week, right? Tuesdays and Thursdays. I remember that. And the topic of race has come up and has been discussed extensively. I know for a fact, because I had a conversation with my children, that there's social studies teacher start every class with current events that are discussed with children. And like Mary Sue also said, the English language arts program covers, like, the 8th graders are currently reading To Kill a Mockingbird, and the 7th graders are reading Mississippi 19.
It's about the Emmett Till trial.
1960, yeah, 50. I can't remember the year. But yeah, so they're both reading important texts, fiction texts on the subject of race. So again, it is interwoven daily into everything that they do. So whether or not it is enough, probably not. And I think we can all agree with that. Should there be more? Yes. I think it's up to us parents to advocate for that with our administrators to make sure that there is more of what is currently happening in the world to our children being addressed in the building when it comes to race.
Agreed. Beth?
And, Renaissance is similar, of course. There's the great array of textbooks they're reading in ELA. We have a restorative justice teacher, Miss Pasteur. There are advisories every morning, which Mr. Stulbaum can talk about a little bit more. I mentioned some of the electives like current events, and Carl finished recently an elective called sports, race, and history. And, he's not a sports kid. I was surprised that he chose that. But it was so interesting. He learned so much, and it was, the foundation of it was about sports, but what it was really about was race relations. And that was really impressive to me, that was woven into, it's like they come for the sports, but they end up staying for the great discussion about current events that they're getting. A good array of assemblies and speakers. Mr. Stulbaum, did you want to talk about the advisories? You know more about that than I do.
Sure. We have advisories every day. It's 20 or 25 minutes, based loosely off restorative justice. So we'll sit in a circle. We'll have a check-in question where every student has the opportunity to speak whatever on their mind, or the opportunity not to speak. Some days it's led more by the students and what's on their mind, and we'll discuss what's going on from what they want to speak about. And other times it's more centrally directed by the school. This is the topic. Various weeks, bully weeks, weeks about bullying and things like that are obviously woven into it. So it's just a great time to, again, for the students to talk about what's really on their mind. It could be race, it could be bullying, it could just be any type of current event. Just a place for them to discuss. And the nice thing, and the restorative justice, which I guess is in most of the schools, but I know we were one of the first or pilot schools, is the whole idea of that is to break down a little bit of the barrier between student and teacher, hoping to eliminate some of those disciplinary problems or those prejudgment problems, prejudgment ideas that you might have, regardless. I'm not just speaking about race or something else, and getting to know each other as people and fostering that environment of, again, I might not agree with you, but I know you as a person, and I can see where you're coming from. And it really pays off with more with the kids amongst the kids, kids that are not friends necessarily, but in this type of environment, I think it breaks down a little bit of the barriers, and it just seems to work really well. We've done things like for lunch, you're given a color-coded card, and that's what table you sit at. So you're not necessarily sitting with your clique of friends that you'd always sit in. And even though it's a small school, people tend to socialize with their friends most of the time. But it's things like that, trying to get the students to get outside of themselves a little bit and just meet others or spend time with others that they might not ordinarily do. And advisories is a great way of doing that.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions in chat. So let's do a quick rapid fire questions. Mary Sue, what's one word that describes your school?
Oh, you told me you were going to ask me this, and I still didn't think of a word.
Okay, let's go to Sarah. We'll come back to you. Sarah or Corinne?
I'd say vibrant.
Okay, Beth?
And since you told us in the beginning this would be the question, I said it in the beginning, and I'll stick with it.
I heard you. Community, yeah. Go ahead, Mary Sue.
Okay, back to me. I would say I was going between curiosity and growth, but I think those are the two biggest things that were fostered in my children during their 3 years at Buzz. So definitely a place of intense intellectual curiosity and fostering that, but just really allowing them to grow into who they're going to be next.
Okay. How would your child describe your school in one word?
Oh,
If Carl's still there, Beth, maybe he can answer.
Downstairs to watch TV, but I think that I think he would say comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Corinne or Sarah?
I got it.
Oh, she's asking. Okay, go ahead, Mary Sue.
So, interestingly, with the two bigger schools, I think my daughters would both say that it feels like home, because they were in different houses, totally different teachers, but each of them really bonded with their house teachers. And I think we're sad to leave after the 3 years, and still the older one during high school still was emailing her Buzz teachers. Her Buzz teachers were emailing her back and checking in on her and that kind of stuff. When she got into college this year, she got a text from one of her teachers who had found out from me. And, so I do think it's a place where, even though we're a bigger school, the houses really let them have sort of their own little comfortable niche in the school.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Sarah, what did your child say?
Oh, she said one word only. And then she said welcoming.
Nice. All right. What is one piece of advice you would give to the parents on this panel, the incoming parents?
Your kids will be okay. Your kids will be fine.
Yeah.
I think you have to, they'll be fine. They start to advocate much more for themselves. That's part of the process. It's harder on the parents than the kids.
Absolutely true.
Amen.
I would say that the one thing missing from being able to go on physical tours right now, I think someone said it right at the very beginning, is that when you, as a 5th grade parent, see 8th graders giving tours, they look like adults, and they look so much taller, so much more muscular than your kid, and you're like, oh, that's never going to be my kid in 3 years, and it is. And so I think that it really is a time of tremendous growth for all middle schoolers, but they'll be okay. I promise.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that. I remember when we took the tour, at Buzz, tours are given by the 8th graders, and adults are just there to sort of monitor the situation, make sure things don't go off the rails. They never do. And I remember 8th graders giving us the tours, and the following year, my younger child, same thing. And it struck me just how eloquent and knowledgeable the children leaving the 8th grade, graduating out of the building are. And that's true for all of the buildings, because I took 2 years in a row with 2 different children for all the 3 schools. So they will be fine and they will be great.
Oh, and I would also say middle school goes by like that.
Yes.
Unlike
Yes.
elementary school, where you have been in a building for 6 years, maybe, so join the PTA, get involved early, for all of us, because you're barely getting your kid in the door, and then you're like, wait a second, they're graduating already. So the 3 years fly.
And I think we all have to remember, we were all 13 once. Not the best time in life for any of us. Like, it's hard. Like, middle school, like 7th grade was the worst year of my life. Like they all go through a lot. There's a lot of growing up that happens. Just puberty itself. Like, it's just a lot of changes happen, and just embrace it.
Which, by the way, the middle schools also handle beautifully.
They do.
They tell the kids, you smell and you need deodorant. I remember when we first went, that was one of the first things. It was Dr. Weller at the time was the principal at Renaissance when we went and toured. And she said, they don't smell now, but they will. And we will take care of that.
Yeah. Beth?
A piece of advice I will share is what I got from Mr. Stulbaum last year. And he said, can you lay off Carl a little bit? Although he may have said that a little more strongly. But the point was that, I wasn't ready to let him fail. And so I was always on him. Did you do this homework? Did you read this chapter? You know, let's talk about it. And he said, you know, leave him the heck alone already. Let him fail. Which he did, you know, he didn't fail, but he has definitely, you know, learned some good lessons without me being there. So thanks, Mr. Stulbaum.
So bottom
I
line
don't
is,
believe I used the word fail, but anyway.
well, bottom line is just like when we started kindergarten, each school has its own uniqueness and it's kind of equal. Each school is equal to the other school. Each school has fantastic teachers, administrators, and a community that you will enjoy. So just, there is no wrong answer. Just enjoy the journey and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Thank you to the PTA presidents. Thank you, Mr. Stulbaum. And thank you to Carl, special appearance. And thank you, Linda. We will see you soon in one of the 3 middle schools. Take care. Good night.